Test, test, test. There we go. Okay, we are back. All right, apologies for that. Now we're actually getting somewhere. Okay, so, test, test. There we go. Okay. All right, now we're getting the echo on my phone, so we should be all good to go. Okay, so just talking a little bit about what we've got going on here the next several days. We've got heat on the way this weekend. We also have some shower and storm chances on the way this weekend as well. And we're wanting to talk about the storm chances first because we know once we get to the storm chances as we go into next weekend, the heat is on the way no matter what. But the storm chances are a little bit more complicated. So let's start with that. We have a bit of a tricky forecast for tonight. What I want to show you here is we've got a marginal risk in place for the area tonight. This looks like we've got some areas that are going to be covered by this marginal risk as we go into tonight. This is pretty much from overnight through about 8 o'clock in the morning. Our main threats overnight to 8 o'clock are going to be strong winds and hail and also the possibility of some heavy rainfall. Trevor, thanks for confirming that sound is good. What we're watching for is how things develop as we take a look off to the west. So on your sky tracker here, we've got these frontal boundaries. One was a warm front that for whatever reason is not quite as strong on your sky tracker. It's this front that's a little bit farther to the south that shows up here and then disappears on the animation. But even though the front is going away, what we're getting is we're going to get this area of storm fuel that is going to gradually build in as we go through the night tonight. And what it's going to do is it's going to keep building off to the north and east. And what these storm systems do along with this storm fuel is they tend to ride these boundaries. And what you're seeing is our first part of this system that is developing out to the west through portions of the Dakotas, and that's going to slide right across portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin and eventually into the UP a little bit later tonight. And so that's part one. Part two is what I want to show you on our HRRR model that we have right here. Notice how we get closer to midnight and we've got these little showers and storms that are starting to develop here. These are involved with that secondary warm front that I was showing you on our map. Now, we expect as we go through the night tonight, we've got some of these showers and storms developing, and this is part two. Now, some of our models earlier tonight were not showing this developing, but we think that this model has a slightly better handle on it, and we think there's going to be enough ingredients available a little bit later into tomorrow morning that we will eventually have enough to get us some showers and storms as we go through early Saturday. So as these develop, the second part will continue to move off through the Upper Peninsula and also into portions of Canada. This line right here, assuming it develops, is likely to impact more parts of mid-Michigan, especially the central and southern parts. If you take a look at the Tri-Cities and Bay region, the Thumb, and areas that are a little bit south of there. I think the big question we have with this part of the system up here, we call that an MCS. It's a mesoscale convective complex. It's just a fancy way of saying big cluster of thunderstorms. And so I think the movement of these is a little bit more chaotic than our typical thunderstorm complexes that happen along cold fronts where you've got one boundary sort of pushing everything along. These tend to have a mind of their own once they start developing, and then they kind of develop and track wherever the better ingredients go. And usually that can be a frontal boundary like the stationary front that we have to our north and west tonight, or it might be they ride along the best instability or the best storm fuel. And also there are occasions where they can pivot their motion a little bit, and sometimes they could follow some more chaotic paths. And so what I think is worth watching is sort of where these thunderstorms go as they cross the UP. Are they going to dive a little bit farther to the south and impact some of our northeastern areas a little bit later tonight, or are they going to stay a little bit farther to the north? Now, it's really starting to just get going off to our west right now. So again, this is out towards the Dakotas, and you can see that frontal boundary that I'm talking about right here, and notice where it's aligned. It's aligned right through that path that I told you, and then I think once it gets through the UP, what we're going to have to watch is where it goes from there. And then the secondary round of storms is what I think we also need to watch going into tonight, because I think if these develop as we expect them to, they're likely going to have some torrential rain, and I think there are ingredients there tonight where we can eventually get some large hail out of this and also some strong gusty winds as those move through. The bright side is, as I put this animation into motion here, this is 7 o'clock in the morning. We fast forward this to around 9. We fast forward to around 10:30, and then eventually towards 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They're done pretty quickly, and once they pass through, once we get to the afternoon hours, I don't think we really have to worry about precipitation much from that point forward. What they're going to do is they're likely going to cap the atmosphere. And what that means is we get this area of warm sinking air aloft. And what that does is it suppresses vertical development. So you get the air that tries to rise with thunderstorms on those hot and humid days, and you get that air to rise because it's lighter than its surroundings, similar to how a hot air balloon is lighter than its surroundings. And that's how it starts rising off the ground. A lot of that air will try to rise with all the heat and humidity that we have this weekend, but what it's going to do is it's going to run into the air that's hotter than itself as it goes up, and it's likely not going to be able to form thunderstorms once we get to the afternoon and once we get to the evening hours. So I think once we get past the rain of the morning, however that turns out, that's what I think is going to happen through the first half of the day, and then after that, all we've got is pretty much sunshine and warmer temperatures from that point forward. So here's how that looks as far as your high temperatures as we head into Saturday. I expect low to mid 90s around mid-Michigan for Saturday. And these are just your actual high temperatures. These are around 80 degrees normally this time of year. That's our average high. So we're right around 10 to 15 degrees above that mark going into Saturday. And then as we go towards the afternoon, you'll notice we start getting that heat index factor. So by 2 o'clock, we're already starting to see temps get back into the mid to upper 90s. We've got a few temperatures feeling more like the triple digits by that point. And even some of our lakeshore areas, they have a chance to get a little bit warmer because of that southwesterly flow too. I know in this particular image right here, Port Hope and East Tawas are projected in the 70s, but keep in mind that southwesterly flow is going to fight back against some of that lake influence, and so those areas will likely feel at times like the 80s and 90s this weekend as well. You may get some influence off of Lake Huron that keeps you just a little bit cooler, maybe a little bit cooler than some of our inland zones, but check out some of these feels like temperatures once we get to Saturday evening. And notice, I think another thing that's often underestimated is once we get to midnight tomorrow night, it still feels like the middle and upper 80s around mid-Michigan. So once we get to midnight and we're starting to settle down for the night, or at least you're kind of getting to that point where you might be wrapping up some of those Saturday night plans, you're still not really getting all that much relief as you head into Saturday night. And even by 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, we're starting to feel it. And then fast forward to the afternoon, it's more triple-digit heat index values on Sunday. And I think we're pretty much doing the same thing over again on Monday. So you're not seeing much relief going through the weekend and early next week. And even though our temperatures are expected to drop off a little bit going into Monday, our humidity looks like it hangs on all the way through Wednesday as well. So instead of combining it with temperatures in the 90s, you're likely combining the humidity with temps in the 80s on Wednesday. So it's still not going to feel very good. Might be a little bit better than the weekend, and the heat index might not be high, but it's still going to feel pretty muggy, pretty stuffy as we head towards Wednesday as well. And I don't think we'll see much improvement there. Let's get back to the hour-by-hour forecast here. And I, again, just want to show you this loop of storms one more time. And so we've got this area that's developing a little bit farther to the north. That's what we called, again, the MCS, the complex of thunderstorms. That is going to develop. It already has developed, and we expect that to move right across the UP. I think my question after it moves into the UP is, does it expand a little bit farther to the south and east into some of our northeasterly zones? I think this area right here, relative to that complex of storms, is a little bit more uncertain. I think we have enough ingredients to get some development here later tonight. It's just to what degree do we see some of that, and also how intense is it? I think based on what is expected to be out there later tonight, we'll have plenty of ingredients for torrential rain. I think we have a chance for some hail to mix in there too, and then that will drive off to the east through the morning hours of our Saturday. So why it's a little bit tricky is, again, we have this marginal risk in place up until about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then once we get to day 2, we call it, in the severe weather outlook, that marginal risk all of a sudden goes up to a slight risk. So I would say plan more for the slight risk category in those areas that are further to the north and east, because I think a lot of these storms will start getting closer to us as we start getting into that 6, 7, 8 o'clock time frame when we're getting up to the end of that marginal risk. And so this is the area that I think has a slightly better chance at some of those strong winds and hail going into the early morning hours of Saturday. And it also highlights the UP for some of that as well. I do think our risk locally here in the TV5 viewing area is probably through about noon or so. I think after we get past lunchtime, if not even before that, depending on how quickly storms get out of here, I think the rest of the day we're really just focused on what exactly it's going to be with the heat and making sure we're taking our breaks with that. Now, as far as the wind outlook goes, this is the wind risk for tomorrow. It highlights that slight risk area a little bit better than that marginal risk off to the south. Looks like we've got the yellow shaded region from about, I would say, Bay City into northeastern Tuscola County, into Sanilac County and areas north of there. That includes much of Clare, Gladwin, and Aranac County and the northern half of Bay County. And then as we take a look at the hail outlook, it's pretty much that same zone, maybe just a little bit different, where we've got some of that marginal risk or the 5% risk from Saginaw off to the south. And then we've got that 15% risk a little bit farther to the north. So the hail risk is a little bit more up into the northern parts of the area as well. Now, the one difference between overnight tonight and tomorrow is the tornado risk as we go through that 8 o'clock time frame is not being highlighted there. It is highlighted a little bit more as we take a look at the day 2 part of it with the slight risk. It's only about a 2% risk. I think this threat is a little bit lower this time around compared to what we dealt with in southern lower Michigan a little bit earlier this week. However, it's still worth paying attention to. I think wind and hail are far and away the bigger threats with this, but I just want to bring that to your attention just to be on the safe side. Now, as far as your next 3 days goes with the heat risk, tonight we're looking at a more moderate heat risk. And so this level of heat that you see shaded in the red zone, the orange zone, that heat affects most individuals sensitive to heat. So this is for folks without AC. There might be some health conditions ongoing there. But once we get into Saturday and Sunday, and you're seeing those areas that are highlighted in red a little bit more, and you're mixing in with some of that purple on Saturday and Sunday, that's where you're getting into the extreme heat. And it's that level of rare and long duration extreme heat with little to no overnight relief that can affect anyone without effective cooling and adequate hydration. So we're not just talking about sensitive groups with that heat. We're talking about everyone having a chance to be impacted by that. And so this is why we're taking it seriously so much, is we know it gets hot in the summer. We usually deal with some 90s every single summer. It's very rare that we don't at least have one stretch of 90s per summer, but it's once we start getting into the humidity category with that, and we also start getting very little overnight relief, that's when we start to get a bit more worried with that. So just want you to have a good 3-day outlook here. That Friday time frame, of course, includes what's left of today, and then once we get into Saturday and Sunday, it really starts to ramp up. Just now getting some comments. Again, if you joined a little bit earlier and the audio was not working, I apologize for that. Still getting some practice here on the desk, but I think I have now figured it out. So next time we should be in pretty good shape. I'll open it up to anyone who wants to ask a question. Have a few more minutes here before I have to start getting ready for our 10 o'clock newscast. Just for anyone who might be going to the Loons game this weekend, I know Saturday nights are usually pretty big at Dow Diamond. First pitch is right around 7:05, so temperatures even at 7 o'clock tomorrow night are still going to be around the low to mid 90s. We've got 90s throughout the game. And we've got the potential for some mid-80s towards the end of the night. Southwesterly winds likely going to be pretty breezy through that game, 10 to 20 miles per hour and gusting near 30. It's also a fireworks night for anybody who's going to that. So it looks like a pretty nice evening other than the heat. So as long as you can stay cool, should be just fine. But other than that, looks like we know the big stories as we head into the weekend. Jeff, you said good evening. Good to see you. Breaking News 989, who doesn't love a good storm? Yeah, I know a lot of people who like good storms. Just hopefully we can get some coming through without any damage. I know the ones, if they materialize tonight, they could be pretty loud as they come through. Probably a good lightning show with anything that develops tonight if we see that happen. We're in the very early stages of any thunderstorm development out to our west. This is the area that we're watching right here. And it actually looks like we just got an update to our surface map. We've got that complex that's going into the Dakotas. We've also got this warm front right here. And I think that warm front, along with some of that instability, that storm fuel, this is going to be what's responsible for anything that develops out over Lake Michigan. And actually, if we zoom in, it looks like we're already starting to see some of those storms that I was talking about that could develop over our region a little bit later tonight. So definitely looks like that's already underway. We'll watch it for the next couple of hours, and then we'll be watching how things progress in Minnesota and the Dakotas tonight and see if any of that impacts our northern communities. Let's see, John asks, how hot will Midland get this weekend? John, I think you're looking at mid-90s by Sunday and Monday. Could we get there on Saturday too? I think Saturdays, there's potential for both low and mid-90s, but I think the real feel both days this weekend is likely going to be between 95 and 100 most of the time. Brian asks, rain in Reese. Assuming they survive the trip, Brian, I think you have a pretty good chance. They will be moving pretty quickly. I don't expect this to be a long, drawn-out rain like we dealt with the other night. So, it's tough to say rainfall totals because of the thunderstorms and how sporadic some of the downpours can be. But definitely think some areas tonight, assuming these develop the way we expect them to, there could be some spots to pick up another inch of rain. Siobhan, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. Will the early morning for Saginaw Township around 8 a.m. be good with no rain? I think it's going to be a close call for Saginaw. So let me just take this back and keep in mind, this is just a simulation. And again, this is an event we call nowcasting often, where we just kind of follow this as it comes through. This is 7 o'clock right here. And Siobhan, you can see those storms that are right around Saginaw. Could by 8 a.m. they be winding down in Saginaw Township? Hopefully, for your sake, because I'm assuming if you're asking, you've got something going on and you're hoping for no rain by that point. But just know it'll be a close call. John says, going to the Loons game tomorrow night, planning on bringing sunscreen. Very good call, John. I'm going to the game myself, so I'm hoping to stay cool also. Alicia, will we have high winds in Bay City? There is potential for some high winds, but I don't think it's a guarantee, at least from a storm factor. That actually does remind me, though. Let me see if I can pull up the wind outlook for tomorrow, because we do expect, even in the absence of severe thunderstorm winds, notice once we get to Saturday afternoon, we've still got those southwesterly winds that are really cranking tomorrow. They get up to about 35 to 45 miles per hour. They're coming out of the southwest. So even without storms tomorrow, I think it's going to be a windy day regardless. It's mostly for the afternoon. If I back up in time here, you'll notice 11 o'clock in the morning, it's really not too bad. But once we get to that afternoon time frame, that's when the winds are really going to start ramping up. Yeah, Siobhan, I think if you get your grocery store trip in, even if you waited until 9 or 10 o'clock, if you could do that, I think storms are probably out of your hair by then. So I think you've got some flexibility if you can do that tomorrow morning. I wouldn't expect the rain to ruin your entire morning the way it looks right now. Hi, Sherry. Thanks for joining. And again, apologies to anybody for the audio issue earlier on. If you tried joining earlier, Ethan Foreman. Ethan's a fellow CMU graduate doing his thing out in the Dakotas. As far as working for a new station out there. So Ethan, keep up the good work. Good to see you. Let's see. Scrolling back in some of the comments here. Jeff asks, how hot will Saginaw get? Jeff, you're pretty much in the same boat as when we were talking about Midland. I don't think there's going to be too much of a difference from place to place inland this weekend. I think anyone anyone by the lakeshore might get a bit of a break, but we're pretty much all kind of in the same boat this weekend. So let's just get back on camera here. All right. So just to show, I've got a couple of notes in front of me with that heat index graph that I showed you. Some of the red colors. Let's see if I can pull that one back up too. But talking about some of the extreme heat levels that were around. They got these different categories. Right here, let's go back to that. And again, we've got the red category and the purple category, which is going to be what gets us through the weekend. And it's that purple category that's the extreme heat, and that's when we start getting heat things that really start to impact everybody. So even if you're not sensitive to the heat, this is when it could start really having an impact late at night when your body's trying to cool down, those types of things. And it really puts a stress on. So, and it's oftentimes we can get through the day just fine if you take precautions. It's when your body starts feeling that stress, especially at night. That's when you really can't catch a break, and that's when then some of that heat stress, really starts to get involved there. Alicia says, so it's high humidity till Monday, then it gets better. I think the temperatures remain high through Monday. Here's the humidity outlook graph that goes through at least Wednesday. You notice it stays pretty high. I think Tuesday we drop back at least a little bit to the 80s. I don't think it's far from the 90s. I think we're kind of in that 89, 88 type of range on Tuesday. But even Wednesday, we drop down into the low to mid 80s for high temperatures, and we still keep the humidity high. So it might feel a little bit better relative to this weekend, but still don't think it's going to feel all that great by Wednesday of next week. And I'm trying to see if I can find another graphic. I'm not sure if I have it readily available. But in case you were thinking about going to the Great Lakes this weekend, especially Lake Michigan, I know we've got a beautiful Lake Huron right by, but I know a lot of folks take trips to Lake Michigan during the summer months. Know that Lake Michigan, just in the off chance that anybody on the stream is watching right now, has plans to go to the west side of the state this weekend, just know that Lake Michigan is a hazardous place to be. Going into this weekend, expecting rip currents and things like that. I don't think our risk is quite as high with Lake Huron. We don't have any beach hazard statements right now, but we do have some wave action this weekend. And I would say stay tuned to any of the beach forecasts that the Weather Service pushes out going into tomorrow if they end up doing that. The small craft advisories they have in place I think are enough to take seriously and know that the waters could be a little bumpy for tomorrow. And I suppose with a southwesterly wind, you're pushing some of that water out. So I think places, if you've got, I'm trying to think of southwesterly wind, if you've got a pier sticking out from, let's say, east to west on the Saginaw Bay, and that southwesterly wind runs into that pier, that's going to force some of that water outward on the south side of that pier. So might just be best to pay attention to your flags this weekend. I know our local beaches do a pretty good job trying to get those flags up and really take care of swimming conditions and all those types of things. Well, I don't see any other questions. It's 9:47. Thanks to everyone for joining. I know this is not the most exciting thing to do on Friday night, but I know you're getting ready for the weekend. I know there's a lot of questions around the heat and all those types of things. So just wanted to give you a quick update tonight. Chief Meteorologist Chris Eastlick, and we'll take a look at some of your questions maybe in the next few minutes and just answer anything. If you have something off the air, I would be happy to answer that. But hopefully, now that I have figured out my problem with the audio, that we can have more of these streams at night, sort of around that 8:30, 9 o'clock time frame. Even when the weather's not severe, maybe we can just have some cool weather chats along the way. Other than that, have an awesome weekend. Stone Schaefer will be in the Weather Center tomorrow morning for Wake Up. So if storms do get a little bumpy tomorrow, you will have somebody here watching everything, and Stone's a great streamer. He'll know what to do with any updates if those are necessary as well. Other than that, have a great night, and we will talk to you soon.